Okay.
I'm just gonna mention a couple of things that we have coming up. And also, I want to just mention that we do have a couple of We Talk Arts that we had recently that are recorded and on our YouTube channel that you might want to go back and review if you missed them. And Strutz did do a We Talk Art with Bonnie Griffith just in January, and Ellen Picard just this past week on Wednesday, the 12th. So those are both all available to rewatch on our YouTube channel. And then we have, let's see, this general membership meeting. And if you haven't seen it yet, our February guest blog is from Mary Aslin. That's been posted to our website. It's a really fascinating blog by Mary Aslin that you might want to check out. I hope you've noticed that the deadline is coming up for entering the Out of Bounds Pastel show, the one that's going to be the mixed media show. And we're going to get some great ideas from Anne today about that. The show's opening on April 3rd at the Art Center Morro Bay. And Tony Elaine is going to be our judge. He's going to be there in person for the reception. It's going to be a lovely show, I'm sure. He's going to be doing a 3-day workshop there from the 16th to the 18th in April. So there's still a few slots left for that. If you're interested, go to our website to sign up. And then our next magazine is coming out the beginning of March, so watch for that. And we have a number of in-person workshops that are coming up. In addition to Tony's in April at the Art Center Morro Bay, we have Desmond O'Hagan coming here to Placerville at the end of May. And watch for Jerry Greenberg. She's going to be in Redondo Beach in June. Laura Pollock's going to be in Morro Bay in July. And Strutz is going to be coming out to California in October, so watch for that. And the next We Talk Art is going to be with Jeff Ludwig, and that's going to be in March, so watch for that also. I think that kind of covers things that are coming up. The next general membership meeting is going to be in April with Corey Pitkin, April 6th. And then I just want to say that we do have some volunteer opportunities. We've got some bigger jobs and we've got some really tiny little jobs. If you think that there's anything that you would like to do to contribute to PSWC, please reach out by going to the Contact Us page and just sending a note. And if there's any way at all that you would be willing to help out, we'd appreciate that. Okay, Anne, are you still with us?
I am. I disappeared because I want to be able to see the slides on my phone.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, are we going to go to
See,
that?
I'm still here.
Okay. Did you want to go to the slides?
Yeah, or you know what? I'll tell a little background about, yeah, let's go to the slides because I can talk about that while I'm talking about the slides.
Okay, so I'll share my screen, and then when you're ready to demo, then I'm just going to highlight you.
Yep, great.
Okay, so let me just share. Am I sharing my screen?
I don't think so.
How come it's...
And if you have trouble, I can just talk through it.
Oh, here.
There we go. Ah, much better. Okay, so go up to the first.
Yeah.
I think you go. Yeah, there we go. Is that the first one? I think
Yeah.
it is.
The
Okay.
faces are not in the way, correct?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Okay, great. Well, first, while this beautiful painting is up here with all this gold leaf, I'm going to, I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey as a pastel artist. And my background. I went to Rhode Island School of Design and I graduated. Most of my fine art experience was towards textiles and fashion design. I started out in New York City and then I had a family and we kind of followed my husband's job. I taught, I worked in the children's wear industry. I worked for Mary McFadden way back. I don't even think anybody really knows who she is, doing textile design. And then as my children grew older, we ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm originally from New Jersey. I graduated from Corona Del Mar High School in California. I was only there for 1 year. Then I went back to Rhode Island, and then my adult life, I went back and forth between Philadelphia and Chicago. Then we ended up in Charlotte, and I said I just want to paint. I wasn't going to teach anymore or do any freelance work. And when I started this journey into just fine art, I found I had a very printmaker quality to my work. I think because of my understanding of color was based on color relationships with one another when you're thinking of fabric design, which is very different than, say, painting a landscape where you're trying to bring in aerial perspective. So it was really interesting for me, that struggle, having been an artist my whole life, but to make that transition, it was a lot harder than I thought. Um, when we moved to Charlotte, well, I had gone to an exhibit. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I had gone to an exhibit in South Jersey, kind of near Stan Spurlock's farm, of called the Noise Museum, and they had a pastel exhibition of, it was either Pastel Society of America or IAPS. And I was like, wow, this pastel can just do so much. It can be super realistic, hyper realism. It can be expressionistic. The colors were so full of vibrancy, and I said, okay, I want to really dive into this medium. And we moved to Charlotte, and I was Googling around trying to find where I could learn about pastel, and saw there was an exhibit at a little center of pastel from the Piedmont Pastel Society, or actually it might have been the three North Carolina Pastel Societies, their statewide show. And I went to that, and I go in, and this woman comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, you like pastel? Are you an artist? Somebody broke her leg and is trying to sell her spot for a Kim Lortier workshop." So my real first workshop was the Kim Lortier workshop. And when I went there, the people were so wonderful. I really, I walked in with like 18 new pastels and a sketchbook and some Mies Taines, I never pronounce things right, paper. So, and then I just fell in love with the community of pastelists, got very involved in the society, became a president, workshop chair. So I do encourage anyone out there to volunteer, because these societies bring so much wonderful opportunities to us. And it was a great learning experience for me. Through helping, people helped me. And that was really wonderful too. It opened a lot of doors. And then I started on a little bit of I call it my master's in pastel, taking as many workshops as I possibly could. I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And Dawn Emerson was a workshop that really clicked with me. And she has been my mentor for, I would say, I adopted her as my mentor, by the way, for about the past 8 years, and introduced me to this brayer technique that I'm going to show you today. Dawn does like to push kind of the boundaries of pastel and using it with other mediums. And that's kind of the focus of our demonstration today. So that sometimes you can feel as an artist, if you consider yourself a pastel artist, you're kind of going through a divorce with pastel when you're wanting to do some work that isn't primarily having the surface covered with pastel. However, if you can open yourself up to trying different things, different mediums, and then it really will enhance how you use your pastel. And you can take what you're trying and learning with these other mediums and take them as far as you want in combination with the pastel medium, Or I have found with working with the brayer, sometimes I will go and put everything away and go back to pure pastel and realize that my hand has learned so many different ways to manipulate materials, and new ways of mark making, and I replicate them in pastel. It enhances my work. Did that make sense?
Yep.
Everybody's kind of on a good page. Okay. So recently, when I first got involved in the medium, and a lot of us, if we're aware of all these pastel shows that you can enter, we like it, it's a really great because it gives you goals to get better and a sense of community, and you get to show your work, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And but it's 80% pastel. And then I got to a point where when I was doing some brayer work, I was like, I don't want to cover it, and I felt like I had to cover it, but really you only have to for these shows and exhibitions, which have a really great place in the pastel world. So, however, you don't want to let that. It was holding me back a little from what I wanted to create and taking my work where I want it to go. So, that's kind of a little bit about my journey of where I am now. And then I also find like I'll go through, you know, 5 or 6 months where I don't want to put very much pastel on top of my brayer work or my underpaintings. And then I'll go back and say, oh, I don't even want to use this brayer. I want to go straight on the paper with my pastel and take advantage of the immediacy of it. So I encourage you to experiment and try different things. And now I'll stop talking and go through the slides and kind of show you this experience that I've gone through. So I just had this up because the next slide, I love gold, and today I'm going to be doing a painting with some gold in the background where I used a different medium for the underpainting, and I'm going to be letting a lot more of it show through. I think I said, I don't know if everybody was on before, but if you're doing different gouache, watercolor, acrylic, oil underpaintings, you're already using mixed mediums. It's just the amount of pastel you put on top. So you don't have to really, it's not like you have to use cold wax, although I do want to learn it, or you have to use collaging or 3D putting. There's a big movement in the high-end art world, the kind of more avant-garde where you're putting like plastic beads and building out all this really intense three-dimensional work on your canvas. You don't have to go that far. So baby steps if you're having trouble with it. So if we click to the next slide.
Trying just a sec.
Yeah, it's
Trying.
okay.
Where, what? Oh,
Yep, okay.
okay.
So first today, we're just going to go through this. There's only 4. So today I'm going to start with a warm up. I do these flowers as warm ups in my studio. I also have no reference for that I'm working from right now. When I do sketch, and a lot of times I'll have a bouquet of flowers. It's a great excuse to always have fresh flowers in your house, to do these. I call them sketches, but they're paintings. And I laugh at this slide. I didn't want it to be the first one because I have a Mondrian, a Georgia O'Keeffe, and an Anne Strutz all on the same page. So, but I want to show you how looking at master's artwork can give you ideas, not just your peers, looking back in history at work. And I have a little bit of background in botanical art. I taught at a arboretum, children's programs, art and science, and there's a botanical art program there. And it's very tight, super realism. And I wanted to kind of take what I knew from there, but it was painful for me to do that. I'm much more of an expressive artist. And I started looking into all the different ways flowers were painted by different, and I just really found the Mondrian, his simplistic flowers, his use of colors was incredible. And I thought this Georgia O'Keeffe was really a unique piece, that you wouldn't think was hers, and the colors. And then I would do something that they inspired me to get some sunflowers and work. Um, in the manner that I have been with the brayer. So I'll start with that and show you an underpainting technique for that. And then we can click to the next one. Up, back up.
I know, I'm trying, sorry. I don't know why
That's
it's
okay.
there.
I love it because I'm not the only one. So this on the top, on the left, there's two Japanese paintings. I love Japanese wood block and Asian artwork. I spent a summer in Japan when I was younger and went on a printmaking tour and a paper making tour. So that's always kind of been an interest and influenced my work. I think it's also kind of more flat, which has that kind of printmaker. Well, they are prints, so wood blocks. And so the top trout photo is a brayer painting. There's a watercolor underpainting. The fish are primarily water mixable oil applied with a brayer, which I'll be showing you. And then because I wanted to enter this, and then like the reds and the salmons, you can see the brushwork that would be the pastel, and it's very light. And because I loved the composition and the flow and what was happening, I looked at these Japanese prints and I said, I'm going to imitate some of the mark making and glaze it on top almost in the same color. The only reason I did that was because I wanted to enter it in a show. So this could have easily been a pastel mixed media. Well, it is a pastel mixed media piece, but it could have, I mean, the pastel added to it, but it could have held its own without adding that pastel on top. So that's another way that you can look at artwork and in a different way to rather than just replicating the style as a whole, look at the way different artists make marks and combine them with the way you work. And yeah, so we can go to the next slide.
Maybe we can.
Okay, and then this is just, and because you video this, I just like to put this up so you have it. These are the materials I'm going to work with today. And I'll explain them as I go. And you'll see a picture of what a brayer is. I'm using powdered pigment mixed in with a little varnish. I have acrylic. This will be on the fish painting, and I will repeat it when I do it. The only reason I'm using acrylic is because I wanted it underneath because I'm working on UArt paper, and I wasn't sure about the varnish on the UArt paper. So, and the varnish I use to mix with this powder pigment. So I'll be showing an underpainting technique where it gives this gold sparkly shimmer. And then I'm going to show how I apply that in the flower paintings. And yeah, so it's basically water mixable oil paint, acrylic, varnish, powder pigment. Sometimes I use gouache as an underpainting. So you can, this is just so you have reference for moving forward where you can, so you have the materials logged. And I think that's the last one, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. So now to the fun stuff, so you don't have to listen to me just talking. So I wanted to show you working with a brayer. This is a palette, just a dirty palette you can all see, correct? And I have some water mixable oil, two little blobs, and the brayer, and I'm going to do a flower painting on oil paper. Underneath, I have powder pigment. It's sparkly, sparkly, sparkly. You can find it, I got this at an art store in Colorado, but you can get it online, and it's on that paper, Pearl X powder pigment. Comes in different sizes, and you can mix it with any medium. And I'm working on oil paper because the oil paper, it's not my favorite for pastel, but I know that it will take shimmery, this shimmery pigment. You can mix it with any kind of medium, not water. It needs to be a little sticky, a little thicker. I tried it with water and it did not work very well. You can mix it right into your paint to give it a shimmer if you wanted to. And I'm just kind of putting some color on the paper right now, so that I have something to work on top of. To mix up a little bit more. You really have to kind of scrub it in. I'll show you here. It's really a powder. If you look on my brush, you can see it. And it sometimes will stick to the surface of something that's slightly sticky. You can see that the oil paper has a lot of texture to it, so you can easily use pastel on it. However, you have to want to have that texture. And right now I'm mixing a little more of that gloss varnish that oil painters use when they finish a painting to pull out color. And I'm not even going to do the whole paper. It kind of manipulates around. And this is really just showing you what I do in my studio. I'm kind of fearless. I like to work fast, try all kinds of things, experiment, see what I like, and then use it in the future intentionally. So I'll take from this experience, okay, well, I liked putting that dry pigment on. I like having this brush marks on here. And I will do it again, knowing what's going to happen. But if you're not willing to try stuff, you're never going to know what type of effect it's going to have. Then this is wet. So when I put the brayer on it, it's probably going to make some, it's going to pull up some of the pigment if you let it dry completely, which I will show you later. The pigment stays and it's nice and permanent on the surface of the paper. Something really nice about spending a lot of times on your underpaintings is and having something that's not pastel underneath, it doesn't move. So people will ask, well, why do you use the brayer? Why not just use a black pastel or a colored pastel and get those solid marks in? But then if I put something on top of it, it's going to move. When you do an alcohol wash that with pastel as your underpainting, that won't move. But sometimes I can't get the colors as vibrant as I would like. And also what's really fun about the oil is you can scratch into it, which I'll show you. So I'm not using a reference kind of on purpose because I just like to play. And this is how you play. You're going to see how the pigment's moving underneath. But this, again, is water mixable oil paint with the brayer applied on Arches oil paper. I know flowers are kind of, now quite often I will be looking at I'll have a vase of flowers in front of me. I'm not trying to paint realistic flowers here. I'm trying to just be expressive with my mark making and really just kind of getting to understand composition, color, and put some story down on paper. I love these as warm-ups. So what has happened is I've always painted them as warm-ups in my studio, and now I have a gallery that wants these as their to sell. Uh, and I was kind of surprised because I'm like, well, wait, those are my warm-up sketches. So now I have a painting in front that was brayer and the varnish. I'm going to take another color. Am I washing my brayer? No. And I'm saying to myself in my head, well, what if I have two colors on my brayer? What will happen? And always asking, like, what if I tried this? I love the brayer too because I don't know always what it's going to do. Um, I can't control it completely, so I can't get caught in little sections and the details. Um, I have to be open to what's happening in front of me on the page. So now I have some pastels, and I'm going to just add, I'm going to start to add a little bit of pastel on top. Everything is still wet. It still goes on top. Now, depending on what paper you use, a lot of times I will do these on Reeves BFK paper, and the pastel will not have as much texture. It'll be a much smoother application. Here, you have a lot of fun texture to what you're doing. But I'm going to be very selective with where I place color. And from here, if you have your flowers in front of you, you can go as realistic or as abstract as you'd like to. You know, you could really build out a beautiful um, carnation or sunflower painting where it's an identifiable floral. But these, like I said, were just like for me to kind of like, I like doing these as a warm up when I'm doing a demo because I get really nervous, and this helps me just get something on paper. Whoops. I wanted to take, maybe I'll try a little oil pastel in here. What if I take oil pastel? And each medium has a different characteristic. What if I take a sponge and want to blend? And then what if I wanted to take a brush? I just have a little water on here. So you know the oil paper, um, you can wet it, but like if you're doing a gouache underpainting or a watercolor underpainting, it's less accepting than the printmaking paper or actual watercolor paper is. I find you can use it, but you have to really scrub with it. This oil paint under the pastel will And it's kind of a dance now, back and forth between pastel, painting till I get to the result I want. Often these are very quick in my studio. A lot of times I like to work on these and for a bit and then come back to them, put them away and come back and put finishing touches on them. But because I'm not working real heavy with any oil or medium, I tend to be able to just kind of get in there and work right away. And that's it. That's just um, a warm-up exercise. And this is a mixed medium work of art where, and I also wanted to share something that I learned. I work with a gallery in Amagansett. It's actually a gallery that he has like house shows and will set up these shows, invite people, have like cocktail parties to sell their artwork. And they wanted me to do oil. They were not interested in my pastel work because they did not want to deal with pastel. Um, so when I went to one of these openings and also going around to galleries, I see quite a few galleries have works under glass, but they're mixed medium and they have pastel on them. So I went home, and because I'm working with a brayer and brayer, which is water mixable oil, and pastel on paper, I presented them to the gallery as works on paper with water mixable oil and pastel and watercolor or gouache or whatever the other mediums I had, and they accepted them, which I found really interesting. So I always called them pastels, but they really were mixed medium. Some had more pastel on them than others, and then there was an openness. So I don't know if that helps any of you who present to galleries, but that's just a little note to self. So do we have any questions about this? No?
I have a
Okay,
question. I have a question.
sure, sure.
So with the soft pastel, do you think that it's best that really we have that as the very top layer, or what do you think?
Well, it's kind of a dance back and forth. I would say two things I've done. You could have an alcohol and pastel underpainting if you want it to. Um, and then yes, then you do your mediums, your whatever your other medium you're working in, and then you put the pastel on because reality is most of those mediums are um, wet mediums, so it's going to wash off the pastel. But if you noticed, and you'll see when I do my fish demo, I will go back and forth. Like I went over the pastel with the brush when I wanted to wet some of the oil paint. So you can go back and forth. It's kind of a dance. It's like applying and subtracting, applying and subtracting. Like down here, and oh, I wanted to show you what's cool about. And like I said, if you guys know Dawn, I know she's done demos for you. She is my very much an influence and has taught me this technique. But you can see with the oil underneath, it would be the same if there was an alcohol wash, but it's not as prominent. You can really move the pigment and create new marks. You can even, it's like I'll say to myself, well, what if I have a bunch of paint on my razor blade now? What would happen if I took it and did this? So that what if question, what if I added watercolor to this now? And then sometimes I won't even ask myself why. I'll say, what if? And then I'll say, well, why would I want to do this again? So you find a reason also for why you use different why you want to use different mediums. Um, so in this piece, I probably will put it away, let it dry, and add some neutral, tone this green down a bit, and maybe work on it for another 10 minutes. But these are just sketches. So yeah, so that, but yeah, so typically you dance back and forth, but you will end with the pastel on top
Okay.
because it's what makes everything sing. You know, it's like that icing on the cake.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now, again, uh, I don't know if you noticed, but we're not working from any reference photos. I think I said that earlier. I grew up at the beach and I love to paint fish. And then it became more of I didn't really want to paint fish. I wanted to paint the motion or capture the energy of and the movement of the fish in the water. So, and I found working with a brayer is a really fun way of painting fish, getting the basics down. And quite often a final work will be on like a UArt paper, sand it. I work big. I think these are what, 18 by 24. Sometimes I go even bigger, 30 by 40. And because I can really get moving behind the easel. And so I'll want to practice before I go on again, and these can be kind of like warm-ups, but I will use, this is drawing paper because I like the white, but you can just use newsprint because even with the newsprint, you can end up adding a little pastel on top. It's amazing how much it teaches you to have a light touch. So you can play around on inexpensive papers. And then when you kind of get the gist of what you want to do, you move on to the more expensive paper. So again, I'm going to have a brayer, oil paint. I have Payne's gray, a turquoise, and a white, which is what I'm going to use on the final demo that I will do. I wanted to mention that brayers come in different sizes. I haven't found any really small ones. The smallest is a 1/2 inch. I think they come in a 1/2 inch, an inch, and they can go quite large. I think this is what, 3 inches. And usually I always use a rubber mallet, not the plastic one, because the paint slides around. You can try it, you might love it, but for me, I really like the rubber speedball mallet or brayer. And I use water mixable oil because the uh, regular oil paint on the papers tend to bleed and you'll get an oil ring around them. So the water mixable does not bleed as much. It also dries faster and it's a lot easier to clean up. So when I'm playing around with these fish paintings, I'm really loosening up and I'm also trying to work through compositional elements. Look how cool that is. Like I couldn't just do that with a pastel. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I've been doing this a long time, so once you practice, kind of get a general idea. If you have a lot more paint on your brayer, it's going to give this goopy textural effect. I will use more or less pressure right now, like to get lines. It's kind of like using the edge of the brayer. And I found when I was painting these, I almost didn't want to put any pastel on them at all. And it took me a long time to let go of that. and say, I can just let this sing as it is, and then apply a glazing of pastel on top. I can decide, I love them on the white, but I can decide to do a watercolor underpainting. I can decide to do a gouache underpainting. I can do a pastel alcohol wash underneath. It's not, you can, I'm going to show you, you can put, I'm just going to put a little pastel here. On the thicker parts, it's not going to go on as well. You can brayer over the pastel, but it doesn't work as well. Ultimately, the dryness and the chalkiness, you're pretty much just picking up the pastel that's there. But I never say never because, you know, it's still there. It's giving a new effect. So it's not that you can't do it. You can. It's like, you know, what happens if I do this? Always asking what if. Now, I love that composition. I don't feel like I need to do anything else to that. So I'll be like, okay, I might go on my UArt paper that I like to work on, or Reeves BFK printmaking paper, and I will recreate that composition using on good paper, so I'm not feeling like I'm wasteful. Now I took two colors. I did not wash my brayer, and I dipped it in the, rolled it in the turquoise paint. Now I'm gonna try something else. Let's see what I'll do here. Let's see what happens if I do a bunch of, it's funny, I always have to play with like different directions because I tend to always go, my fish are always going that way. And I'm like, oh, what happens if I go this way? Big blob. This has cool effect. One of those Japanese prints, if you look at when they send the video recording, one thing I loved, I noticed in a lot of these wood cuts to show rain or motion, they put the lines right through the subject matter, right through it, right over it. So I was like, well, I was doing a mountain biker, and that's how I started doing this type of thing. I was like, what happens if, I want to show the energy of that mountain biker. I want to show how these fish are swooping through the water or jumping out of the water, or whatever they're doing. And I'm not an underwater photographer, so I have to kind of use I've seen fish underwater, but I have to kind of use my imagination. So this can really be a building process. It's a dance. This is what happens when you don't spread the ink or the oil on your brayer at all. You'll get these blobs, but it's kind of cool. So there's another brayer. And then maybe I'll just take a little, this is just a white pastel, and I want to get that reflective quality. And you can, it's so forgiving. You can, you can remove and go back and forth and really just play. And I'm on inexpensive paper. And I'll tell you what, I have a couple newsprint lithographs I did on newsprint. I was terrible at lithography in college, but I tried it. And I still, there was one piece I threw out on newsprint. Somebody picked it up and framed it. I still have it. It's on newsprint. The newsprint's changed a little in color. These will last a long time, but they're not gonna, I don't think they'll last 100 years. But, if I like them, sometimes I will pop them in a frame. And I'll do one more real fast. And then I know my arm is ready. I've played with my pastel. This one, I'm gonna really get the turquoise onto my brayer. thinking composition, staying away from the middle, which I somehow always end up in the middle. If I don't do these, I always end up in the middle of my paper. I'm going to get bigger. This oil can also be your underpainting. Over, I don't have a lot of paint on it. Take my razor blade. That additive and subtractive process. But I'm just playing, experimenting. What happens if? This has very little pastel, but you can make the pastel a big part. Maybe I want to add some line. Maybe I want to build out this fish and make it more recognizable. What if? Playing with shape and line, shape and line. And it's just a building process. That's not going on top. This is a metallic Diane Townsend pastel. So this oil has to, oh, there, I just had to get, it's a new pastel, so I had to get the, I know whatever film was preventing it. So the pastel, as I work it, can make the whole thing sting almost. It either can be a splash of color or it could be a touch of detail. I'm on inexpensive paper, so I'm like, okay, well, did that work? Do I like that? Do I not like that? I can ask these questions while I'm practicing on the regular Bristol also works drawing paper. And then I will go from here to working on a final paper. So I'm jumping back and forth a little bit, but the very first slide of the irises with this beautiful indigo blue and the gold, I really love. And I was like, I'm probably going to do it with flowers too, but I'm going to try it with a fish. And this is now is it 340, not the 400 grit, one below. I think it's 340. I buy it by the roll so I can get bigger sheets. And because I work so large, this is actually kind of small for some of the fish paintings. Underneath here, I have an underpainting. I used a little bit of acrylic paint. This is very cheap, not cheap, inexpensive, studio grade gold acrylic. And I put a light glaze. It came off. It comes off when it's wet. Like I showed you in the floral, the brayer will pick it up off of it when it's wet. I didn't know that was going to happen. when when I first started experimenting with using this gold pigment, powder pigment, the Pearl X. Um, I wanted to find something I could mix it with that was clear and would add more shine, and that's why I picked I also paint in oil, so I just was playing with the varnish, the high gloss varnish. So this is that pigment with the high gloss varnish with a little bit of acrylic underneath. I didn't put any of, right here is the acrylic with a little bit of this powder mixed into it. You can mix it right into your paint and it'll give it a sheen. But I really loved it mixed with something clear, um, because it really gives don't know if you can tell as much on the phone, but it really gives it an incredible gold. It looks like gold leaf. So yeah, and then I took the color palette from being inspired by the Japanese screen printing, which is gold leaf. And my fingerprints are up here, I see. So I must have touched this when, and things are more forgiving than you think. So what I learned through saying, what if I just want to try my brayer on here, is it picked up all this stuff. It created this cool textures. I can pull this in a little and then I'll replace it. So you can you see the texture better here? Where it picked up the paint, and there's little ridges. So it's really cool when I put the pastel on top of that. It will create interesting effects. And now I'm going to take my brayer, and I did my warm-ups. Sometimes I'll have them pinned up on a wall behind me. I probably have, I've probably done 2,000 brayer paintings on sketch paper over the past 9 years. So I will, I'll do them at first. I'll have them on the wall, and I'm going to be a little bit more intentional now with what I'm doing, because I'm on my good paper. I'm going to take my playing and be a little bit more intentional. I have these marks. I can echo them and have the fish right where they are, or maybe I'll put them in between. I've been wanting to play with this. I'm working on these fish paintings where it's many, many layers of, like maybe 10 layers of fish, where I'll do a painting and then I'll do another painting on top of the same painting. So you really kind of get a school effect. Usually I have a lot of music going too when I'm painting. Um, Now I have white and turquoise. I think I'm going to, got to stay away from that center, which I'm not. Sometimes I'll have a little mark here. Let's see what happens if I go over this. I added some Payne's gray onto the brayer. And it's a process of stepping back, seeing if I'm liking the composition I'm creating, what kind of movement I'm getting, because that's my goal, is to capture movement. I haven't even used any pastel yet, but I will. Not sure I love that. Maybe I'll go over it with a little. Want to keep the eye on the paper, so these little marks help your eye flow through. So now that I have my underpainting, this is kind of like the second underpainting. I'm going to go on with pastel, but I think first I'm maybe going to do a little scratching. The thicker oil paint will not have the pastel adhere as much. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'm picking some off. If I want to keep a lot of this texture, I might wait for it to dry before I add a lot of pastel. What's also really interesting about having the texture is when you glaze the pastel on top, the pastel will pick up that texture as well. And now for the finishing touches, I'm going to put some pastel on top. I pre-select it. I have a lot of pastels, so I decided, sometimes I have to limit myself. So I'll think about a palette, and I pre-selected some pastels for this demonstration using a very limited. Um, you eat through them like nobody's business, and you'll see. I'll tell you when I'm using it. And silver. Then I have an iridescent Diane Townsend, which I love. They're very gritty. These are some Diane Townsends. They work well on top of the oil. And then Art Spectrum, I have a couple of their metallics, which are new. They're much harder, so they don't go on as buttery as the Great American. So yeah, so then now I'm going to put some pastel. And this is a Terry Ludwig. Usually people are always asking, what is that? I'm going right over the oil. Maybe I want it to be another fish layering. Again, it's just playing and being fearless, but a little more intentional with what I'm doing after I've experimented, taken some time to get to know my materials and play. This is picking up a beautiful texture from the paint, and it almost looks like fish scales to me. And sometimes it's fun to just experiment this way because it's not, I mean, it's abstract, but you can kind of tell it's fish. Um, uh, it's freeing because I'm not like trying to copy something or have a preconceived notion in my head of what it is it's going to look like. And some days that just feels good, to not put that pressure on yourself. Always nice to use some neutral um, with your more vibrant colors. What if I, okay, so I kind of want to, I tried to find a blue that matches that blue. This down on the bottom here is gouache. Um, I switched from using, I didn't need the metallic down here, but maybe I want to carry this blue up here. Maybe I don't want it to end there. Maybe I want, and then it's a dance back and forth with what I'm doing here. I don't want to cover this entirely because I really like it. Um, take a sponge. And it gives it that. I want to take my razor blade and have to step back a minute, see what's going on here. Okay, so now I'm seeing, I'm definitely going to work this out, but I want a little, another fish up here. Should I do it in pastel? Should I do it in brayer? I'm going with the brayer. Take this gold, which is almost like an eraser for me. Well, not quite, huh? It's a little darker. And go back in with this. See how soft it is? This will really, and when I do these quite often, I'll work on them, put them aside, do another one. So I'm working on multiple at a time because they're very easy to overwork. I'm going to take a silver. This is over the oil. Can't really see that side of the painting working from here. One more. And it's kind of the dance. Back and forth. This is the harder, lighter gold. This is more my eraser. If I don't like that, I can take it away. But, so you're using the pastel as adding textures. I actually think I might, let's see what happens if I take this guy out. Just step back. Then I'll work through a dance back and forth with him. Then I could take a brayer tool like this, roll it across my palette. This, when it dries, when you put pastel over it, it's really can be really interesting, create really interesting marks. So I might maybe see if it'll, no, that one's too soft. You have to use a harder. So it's really just a dance. And that's pretty much how I use a mixed medium, and not afraid of experimenting with all different kinds of materials to get the effects that I would like in a painting. I think that's pretty much. Does anybody have questions at all?
Wow, there's nothing like watching somebody else play.
That is. That's what this is. When this is what I do every day. I really look at it as playing, and playing. When I play, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I need to resolve what's going on here, which I will. I'll send an image when I finish the painting. But it's always this dance back and forth, back and forth. Honestly, if I didn't put as much pastel on here, I probably wouldn't have run into this problem, which is where I have moved to using less pastel on my work. I have the same, I'm going to just pull one other painting. It's a very different, couple different things that you can see. I think in the We Talk, I might have showed this, but when I do landscapes, it's the same thing. And quite often, so this is a landscape of a place in Long Island. This has watercolor underneath, brayer. All this is brayer. If you want me to, I can show you a brayer, just a straight up brayer that I have. And then all these lines are the pastel. And I really am like, there's barely any pastel up here. I probably would have used less in this area, but it does make it kind of sing. When the straight brayer.
And the brayer was in water soluble oil.
Water soluble oil.
Okay.
Yep. And you're kind of, you're not painting with a traditional tool. You're using another medium.
Mm-hmm.
So here, and these fish, the brayered paintings themselves that you saw were beautiful. So here is a landscape so I will take this brayer and work from this as my reference to do another painting. Sometimes I will take a brayer like this and create it on not Lux Archival, what's the Lacarte that you can't put any wet medium on, and recreate it just getting these abstract shapes just in pastel, which is
Mm,
not what we're talking about today. But here, I love this as it is. So rather than continuing to add pastel, I kept it and I did another one. And now like I keep working on them to get them to exactly where I want it to be. And you can also, if you're playing with color, you can turn it, it can be a day scene, it could be a night scene, it could be whatever you want it to be. It could be a cloudy day, it could be a sunny day. So if you play with color and mark making. But this would be really hard to get for me without using the brayer. And it brings that simplicity and clean aspect to the painting. Um, yeah, so I think that kind of covers it.
yeah. So using the brayer to get kind of the simple composition and the shapes. And then even if you recreate it with just the pastel, you use the brayer to inspire that composition
Yes.
shapes. Yeah, that's so
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of working out the because I am one who I am very drawn to hyper realism, but I it's painful for me to do it. So by working with the oil and the brayer, it has allowed me that to free me from seeing all that detail, to loosen up, to break through, to think differently about things. And I'll even take the brush to the oil paint, but working this way has allowed me, if I didn't work with the brayer and a water mixable oil, I never would have been open to starting to figure out different types of underpaintings to do. Because the underpainting can become very important. Either it's clean and it's nothing, or you want it to have to say something in and of itself. And it's really fun to combine the different mediums um, to get the result that you want.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know why, but I work on panels, but I just love to work on paper.
Mhm.
And I love the pastel. But um, one of the things about trying this mixed medium approach and opening up to trying other mediums is I never would have gotten here if I hadn't started with the brayer. I never would have figured out, oh, I just want to capture energy with fish and painting, taking some of my textile printmaking background, playing with pattern, and then applying pastel. I never would have thought of that.
Mhm.
So by experimenting and trying, it helps you step out of the box of doing the traditional pastel landscape or still life, which are beautiful. And I love them. So it's not like I don't love doing that and love that, but this also adds to your kind of repertoire and your artistic experience.
Yeah. Can you tell us again, Anne, about the golds that you're using?
Yes. Okay. So I started, so with this, which is relatively new for me to be using these. Uh, where's my gold one? It's a bigger bottle. Oh, here it is. These are just pigment.
Mhm.
This one's called Pearl X. By the way, I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I'm not saying these names or anything because, so it's Pearl X Sparkle Gold, and I mixed it with um, the Gamvar gloss because I had it in my studio and I have lots of different things that I am experimenting with all the time in my studio. And I mixed it with that. So on the UArt paper, I put a light acrylic wash on top of it. I also had contacted UArt and the water mixable oil is fine on top of the UArt paper. I'm also not applying it super thick. It's not like I'm doing a full oil painting on the paper.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so because I wasn't sure about the varnish on the paper, I put the acrylic on, and then the pastels. This is the Great American, yeah, here, Great American Artworks Gold. It's really soft. I'll put another mark on with it so you can see. Look, if I go on here, it goes over everything. It's really soft. A lot of it you can see falls down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those great,
Then this,
super
huh?
soft. Those Great Americans are so, so soft.
And if you've used them and you haven't used the metallics are even softer. I mean, they're really soft. And then this one is they're from Australia. Um, what's the brand from? Art Spectrum. These.
Oh,
So this is an Art Spectrum Gold. And I thought I would try that. It's nowhere near as sparkly. Like I love the Great American. I'm not, they don't serve my purpose well. They're all of their pastels, but I do love the Great American metallics. I also use, oh, look how cool that is. So I can go back and recover and do cool mark making, carve in and refine. Okay, so it was the Great American Gold and the other gold. Those were the main. And then the paints are water mixable. Oil, I find the best color assortments you can find are Winsor Newton and Holbein. I
okay.
think Holbein calls them duo aqua oil.
Yeah. And Ginny Lieberman is mentioning that you can mix the Pearl-Ex with acrylic mediums too.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty new at I've been playing with them. I got them when I was out in Colorado at an art store. And I'm like, oh, those look like so much fun. Uh, great. I will try that. Thanks for the tip.
Okay, and people are saying thank you so much, Anne. It's really inspiring to see your work. Karen says very inspiring. I was certainly inspired.
Yeah, I hope it's a little different approach for everybody when people see, and like you said, playing, um, we all want to get better and we all want to hone our craft, but we all want to enjoy ourselves while we're doing it. And you could go back and forth from working on something that is very detailed and time consuming, and you have a specific outcome, more maybe a little more realistic or impressionistic. Take a break, play, go back to it. You're going to feel a lot better.
Right.
Step away when you're getting frustrated.
Such inspiring innovations. Awesome. Thank you. People are saying
Okay.
so much, Anne.
All right.
Really
Thanks, Pam.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having
And
me.
yeah, and we'll see you back out here in California this fall.
Yeah, I can't
Great.
wait. And we will do so. If you sign up for the workshop, I bring tons of materials and we do so much fun stuff.
Yes.
So, and you'll walk away hopefully inspired
Yay.
um, to do new things. All right, good luck. I hope you all enter the show.
Thanks. Thank you,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.
Bye-bye.